I think because mostly everything's with technology nowadays, anything to do with technology would be more useful than actually having to go in and ask a question. I think about, I guess because I don't think really young people really want to waste their time actually having to go there. I think they would prefer it just if they could text, call or email the doctor, because like teenagers would rather be out with their friends than having to worry about going to appointments for doctors.
So it's really convenient now that we've got an online booking system where we can book an appointment up to 3 weeks in advance, and you can see which doctors are available. So I like to see the GP that I know, and there are a couple of the GPs that I've seen quite a few times, so I feel a little bit more comfortable with them because I think they know more about me than some of the new GPs do. But when you do ring up for an appointment, the line opens at 8 o'clock and you can be sat waiting in the queue for 40 minutes, the engaged tone trying to keep ringing back, and it can be frustrating as well if you're not feeling well. And when you do get through, sometimes all the appointments have gone, and then sometimes they say, right, it's such a doctor, and you think, well, I've got a choice of who I get to go to see. And then, sometimes they say, we've not got an appointment for a week's time, or you can book one in 2 weeks' time, which is when you're not feeling well, especially with a long-term condition. Waiting 2 weeks can be a long time, and it's not something that you can predict because of the variability with the condition. One day you can be fine, the day after you could be unable to get out of bed. So that's been a problem. I've noticed it, and I know a lot of other people have noticed it as well.
Since there was a new practice manager and things were changing a bit there at the practice.
So now there's a new practice manager, and things started to change a little bit, and I think she's brought some new ideas. And with the shift of everything, how things are going now, they need to help patients to have that availability of getting an appointment, which is why they do the online system, which is great.
I think it would be helpful, maybe if you wanted to book something with a specific doctor you'd be able to see when they have appointments. I think if I knew about it, I think we'd use it, but I'm not sure if my mum would, because she's not kind of with the technology. I think she'd find it a bit scary to use it to book on doctors.
But if you were going to book one for yourself, in a few years' time, say, when you...
Yeah, definitely. I think it's easier than having to ring up doctors. You can kind of do it in your own time. You don't have to be like at 8 a.m. in the morning when it opens ringing. You can kind of book it before, because you don't need someone to pick up the phone. So I think I'd use it, definitely.
I've never been to a pharmacist specifically to buy something, but because I'm type 1 diabetic, I get it for free. But I've never explored kind of asking for something. My experience with pharmacies is when I order a repeat prescription just online from my surgery, which is great. I love online services for GP surgeries. That's definitely something that's good.
But I think in terms of online prescriptions, I know at the back of prescriptions they have ones for if you need the same medication or something, you can just pick it up again. Yeah, that's it. So I think online prescriptions for that would be easier, because now what you have to do with repeat prescriptions, when you go to the pharmacy, you take the repeat prescription back, and then when you want it again, you have to go back to the GP and you have to put it in their letterbox thing, and then they make that into a prescription again, and you have to go pick it up, go to the pharmacy again to get it. So I think the online service might be good for that, but in terms of the doctor setting it and you pick it up from the pharmacy, that saves the journey as well, because you won't need to go and pick up the prescription.
People are scared of some of the issues that they have, and I can understand why telephone conversation would be for them, but I feel like it should be stressed, it should be important for them to go themselves, because you don't know what the scenario is. People have they've waited and waited because of on the conditions that they have, and it's been too late because they're not brave enough. They're too scared to go and face their doctors, their GPs. And I feel like it's important for them to go. It doesn't matter how embarrassing it is. It's only between the GP and themselves. So
One of my friend's surgeries, you have to have the telephone consultation before they'll agree to see you at all. And so what you say over the phone isn't necessarily what you say to someone face to face, but also I think that a doctor picks up an awful lot about you by your body language. And so I think some people probably aren't seen when they should be, just because they're putting a brave face on it and their GP can't tell the difference because they've only got what the patient is saying to go on.
I think I'd probably feel comfortable with it, but I think because I'm a bit of a worrier, I think me myself, I'd be really worried that I'm on the phone to them and then they're just there like laughing about me like, oh, she sounds right stupid. But at least if I can see them, at least I can see they're not laughing.
Yeah.
Even if when I leave they laugh at me after. But I'm like, at least they're not laughing at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How about for perhaps younger people, teenagers, anything? I don't know if you would have found this helpful at all. If there was a telephone number that you could ring at a certain time of the early evening, like after school or after uni, which was just for young people, where you can phone up and ask your questions rather than go in, would that kind of thing be helpful, or do you think just a general phone number is sufficient?
No, yeah, I think a young person's one's good, because as I say, there needs to be one which is, as any age group, I guess, it would need to be specific for them, that particular person. And if it's something that isn't like a general injury, because then I guess you can just use a normal line. But if it's something that relates to specific age groups or something like that, then definitely like a hotline for young age people would be a really good idea. And people who are trained in dealing with young people rather than general.
So you've never heard of telephone consultations? No.
No.
Would that sort of thing have been helpful or be helpful now?
Probably, yeah, because when you're really ill, sometimes you just don't want to leave the house, and so like you might miss an appointment or something like that, and like that's a good compromise, like in the middle, like when you need to go but you can't feel able to get out of bed sometimes. So I think they should really promote that a bit more, really, yeah.
But I think, yeah, just like I said before about that convenience of phoning, and then they, you talk through maybe what was going on, and then they would say if you needed to come into the surgery or not. I think that's a great way to maximise resources, both from my perspective and their perspective, because it's like they'll have less people coming into the surgery with willy-nilly coughs that can be sorted by doing a few different things, or like saying a few like taking medications or anything like that.
I think that would be helpful because some people want to remain anonymous, or there's some situations where the parents feel like they have to go with the child, and considering that everybody has phones nowadays, they can just phone up anonymously and then be able to have that short conversation, and they feel better about the situation that they're in.
Like a helpline, because I feel like 111, they lost a lot of money that day. They lost a lot of money, and it only turned out I needed to get this wind out. That's all it turned out to be. And for me, how much more money would it have saved if I just went through to a helpline and they would have said, okay, this is what you do, you sit on this, you move around this way, when the wind comes out, go to the toilet, because once the wind comes out, that's when the toilet follows. So go straight to the toilet. It might hurt, but it will come out and you'll be fine.
I think that Skype appointments should be made available, and maybe phone appointments, but I think Skype would be better if obviously both parties have access to it. And I think that they'd be much better for people if they are going to talk about mental health or they do have anxiety, because for some people it is obviously difficult to like leave the house or go certain places. So I do think things like Skype calls would be good.
So I think keeping up to date with modern technology is really good. I know that they're introducing like Skype consultations now, which is great, because then you don't have to take the time off work, as I keep harping on about. But I think things like that can make it a lot easier for people, especially if like maybe they've got some kind of condition where they can't physically get to the GP surgery. then it's great to have that resource of I'm actually talking to a known professional, I can see them right there, as opposed to, just a message.
I find the email really helpful. If you've got the problem is then the doctors could be having 10,000 emails coming through in a day, and I can see the goods and the bads of having that. But the ability for them to perhaps email blood results to me would be much more convenient than having to ring up. So can you print the bloods out, which would be 2 days, and then to go in to collect them? It just has a little more stress. So if
I think it would only be useful if you've maybe got a rash or some kind of wound, so you can take a photo and send it and say, do I need to come in? Is this contagious? But I still think then that quite often the GP is probably going to have to see it in the flesh anyway to make a decision.
And it could be instant as well. It's even quicker than someone phoning you for the consultation, because as I say, I went there in the morning and was told that someone would call me later that day. I think I was told that they would call me at 11 a.m. and then I didn't get a phone call till about 2.
Have any of your friends or anybody else recommended anything that they thought, this really helped, maybe you should try this? Have they ever suggested anything?
Not really, just if I need them at any time, just phone them. Even at 2 in the morning, just phone them and they'll pick up.
Yeah. And have you ever done that, phone them?
No, but the counsellor person who I saw, she gave me the texting number for Samaritans, which has been helpful.
Oh, that's good. A few people have mentioned that actually.
Yeah.
So with the Samaritans, did you phone them or?
I text them for that, because again, it's talking. I don't like doing it.
No.
So I'd rather send a text so that I can get my words right, because autocorrect tells me what word I want.
Yeah, I think like a lot of the time now, people use social media messaging and stuff a lot. And one of the services I used to use, I could text them, and that was like really, really helpful as a young person, because I find it difficult to speak on the phone sometimes as well. I find it difficult to speak to people face to face, so texting was really good. So I think maybe it might be difficult to do, but maybe if they sort of made it a bit more relevant to young people, like texting or something, then that would be really good. So I would text them if I needed something, if I forgot when the next appointment was, if I needed some sort of support or anything, and then they would be really, really helpful, and they would say, why don't you try this? They would text one of the coping strategies I could try, for example, and it just really helped, because sometimes you can't get it out in words, so it's just a lot less daunting to text sometimes.
Yeah, probably email or call, because I feel like a text could be too personal, and it's also easier if it's a lot of information. It'll be easier if it was an email or a phone call.
Well, I think if those kinds of things, like a GP kind of, how you get when you go into Curry's websites and stuff, and you can get the live chat, and it's ask for help, blah blah blah. If they had something like that, for each surgery that you had to log into, I think then you would know it was legitimate, which I actually believe there might already exist. But anyway, I think that would be good. Just to ask advice, because it's all in well Googling something, but that's how people drive themselves crazy once they start a Google search on something. And it's if you just have a known professional, potentially your own GP that you've been to and are familiar with, then I think that would be really helpful. They could have a set amount of time during the day that they dedicate to answering questions that people would know is their time to log on and ask a question or something. I think that would be really helpful.
We could talk about, I've already mentioned this quite a lot. We can mention about, again, sex and drugs. So talking about relationships and asking questions about, should I have sex and stuff like that. And you can talk about, and he asked you about how old you are. I was I'm 13, and you can talk about how the implications and the consequences, and because it's really hard to approach parents about this sort of stuff because they get angry, and it's hard to approach anybody else because this needs to be private, it needs to be one-on-one.
I always would prefer to have a face-to-face meeting, but for something that's a bit smaller, for, you know, if you just want to check that everything's okay, then maybe you know, an online chat maybe, but you can often feel you're not quite sure who you're speaking to, so you don't feel as comfortable saying some things to them as you would in a face-to-face in the consultation. Online you're never really sure who can access what you're saying.
Maybe for the younger individuals who use the internet more than I do myself, I think maybe if you had maybe a page that sort of answered frequently asked questions or worries and issues, and also you know, highlighted the fact, like you mentioned in this little leaflet, that some of these things are all issues that you can see your GP for, and that they'll be understanding in those circumstances. I think maybe even with testimonials, I think that would probably promote GPs.
But at that point, because this was 5 years ago, and social media has come on so far since that point, you know, I wasn't directly signposted to it, and yet you're signposted more to kind of the information about diabetes. So it's like, yeah, like what's going on in your body and why it might have happened and how you can deal with it on a daily basis from that point onwards. But the social aspect, the kind of the emotional support that you can gain from online avenues, that's definitely never been mentioned to me.
I would take a look at the website, but the problem with the websites that are already on hand is that they specialize quite a lot, so you'd have to go to different websites to find everything. But if they put everything in one website, then I think it'd be more appealing to younger people.
I was having some problems with my insulin, with my type 1 diabetes, just with the reaction within my body. And, you know, I'd been to my GP, and, you know, it wasn't that they weren't useful, but I think they kind of lacked an in-depth understanding of what might be going on. And so I was kind of passed along to someone else, and like other things were suggested. And so I then, because I've got a lot of friends that are diabetic through online avenues anyway, I immediately kind of went online to see if anyone else had experienced the things I had. And, you know, that kind of leads you into, well, particularly because I'm really interested in research anyway, that kind of led me to some journals and like some up-to-date research on what might be going on in your body, and what's been shown in different countries and things. So I think there's a wide scope online, from things like social media platforms and where people are just sharing their experiences, to then actual kind of research that's been published and is widely recognised. I like having a mixture of what's available.
The internet is really bad. It's really good, but it does have a lot of bad sources, and you know, I try to, because I'm more sciencey and because I do science at university, I know where to look really that is reliable information. So I'm looking at a lot of publications and look at a lot of good websites that they've been wrote by patients and consultants and other team members. So you know it's reliable information. But if you do type in something that you got wrong, Wikipedia frequently comes up, and a lot of the useful information, but there's a lot of stuff that can worry patients or their family members as well. And there's a lot of discussion boards as well, and people saying, I've got this and it could be this, and all these things floating around as well, which can really add to the anxiety and the uncertainty for a patient. And maybe it's not all factual really.
When you took all the stuff that you'd looked on the internet and everything, and you took it to your GP, the symptoms and everything, did he or she, did you feel that you were treated differently at that point, or not really?
I feel like they took more time to listen to what I was saying, but I think they were still weary of the fact that, I must have, just Googled this, and I must have just, gone, oh my gosh, what's the worst possible scenario that could happen if you've got a headache? Like, I know that, I'm more than aware, having been through what I've been through, that the best idea is not to try and Google what possible outcomes are, Like, that's the worst thing you can do.
Do you think it'd be helpful to see other people's experiences?
Yeah, definitely. I think because sometimes in your own head you can make things out to be worse than they are, and to maybe someone else has experienced something the same or worse, and you never know. Can add a bit of kind of comedy into it, because I think, well, not comedy, but you know what I mean, that it's like just eases people's like stereotypes and like the perceptions of GPs. I think if they know that someone their age has either gone through the same thing or you can compare yourself to other people, which I think as a young person is what you go through, isn't it? You're trying to figure out where you fit in, so to know what other people are thinking helps you do that.
So now it's got to the point that if I do feel ill or anything, I just have to Google my symptoms and see what that's related to, and I just look up what medication and stuff I need to take, and I'll either go to the GP or I'll just go to Holland and Barrett, because they do all these medicinal home therapy stuff. So yeah, it's got to the point where I've been avoiding GPs as much as I can now. Especially when after you hit 18, they think that you're old enough to look after yourself. So because that's the vibe that they give off, I'd rather just not go to them at all. I'd rather just Google it.
I'd Google it, and there's an NHS site that's normally quite useful, because it says the symptoms that you'll get, and then what to do when you get them, and then also about the actual, what's actually going on. That can be using Wikipedia to understand the more complex happenings of what the virus or whatever it is might be, to find out what it actually is. I quite like looking at that.
I did look at a few medical websites just to see if my symptoms aligned with what the doctors have said, so just a sort of process of elimination myself of what it could be. I did that once or twice, but I think a lot of the symptoms obviously didn't align with the kidney stones. So even though it did turn out I had them, it was weird because reading some of it kind of put that doubt in my mind that it could have been something more serious as well. And I think what I found was some of the websites are very quick to catastrophize, I can't say the word, but they paint more of the negative picture about it, and I think it can kind of get you to a point of panic or worry, and if your symptoms don't align with a particular set, you start thinking, well, actually, could mine be the worst? Could it be the worst case scenario? And I think that can increase the worry inside someone in some ways.
So basically, every time I try to go to a new GP or any kind of doctor, I always tend to Google it up, like who's around my area, and you look at the reviews now. So I think that's one thing that the doctors and GPs are forgetting nowadays, that social media and everything is a really key in people these days. So we will Google it, go online, try to find reviews about it. If it's a good review, then you're gonna go there. I mean, yeah, of course, occasionally every place has one bad one, but like I'm gonna try to go to the place where the most good review is. And just when I get there, I mean, yeah, there were times that doctor wasn't good for me. I don't really know why. It was just, I think you need to also have a connection with your own doctor now, as in making you feel welcome. If I don't feel welcomed or if I feel rushed, I just straight up go to somewhere else.
Are there any messages to young people that you'd like to say?
I think there's so many. I think one of the messages should be, if you ever have a problem with like healthcare, you should tell them. Like, I think each GP or each A&E should have like a comment box, and I'm pretty sure like that comment box would be filled with comments and stuff. So yeah, they shouldn't be afraid to express their opinions about healthcare, because at the end of the day, it is one of the most important things that we need to care about.